Hi there, welcome to the Pastor's Corner teaching series. We're just going through the book of James. We're going through verse by verse, chapter by chapter. These segments are about 7 to 10 minutes each, and if you want to look at them all at once or go through them at your own pace, you're more than welcome to do so. For today, we're looking at James chapter 1, verses 9 to 12. James chapter 1, verses 9 to 12, here's what it says. Believers in humble circumstances ought to take pride in their high position. But the rich should take pride in their humiliation, since they will pass away like a wild flower. For the sun rises with scorching heat and withers the plant. Its blossoms fall, and its beauty is destroyed. In the same way, the rich will fade away even while they go about their business. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. Well, in this section, again, it's part of a greater context of James just describing the trials that we will go through as Christians. And again, trials are meant to lead us into spiritual maturity. And I think right here, what James does is he goes to a very tangible example of a trial that many of us will undergo. And it's about money, our finances, and about who we are as a result of that. See, money is an important thing. We need money in this world. We can't go about your daily life without it. You're going to need it to buy food, and you probably have a mortgage, or you're paying rent. You're going to need it for clothes. Money, again, is at the end of the day, it's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just simply a tool. It's neutral. It has no bearing on anything. But it's our attitude towards money that we need to look at. Our attitude towards money is the key. And so one of the challenges I think we find in the Christian faith is that there's this dynamic of spirituality that we always have when it comes to wealth and when it comes to poverty. We're always in this weird tension when it comes to these two. The context for James is that the Christians in that time, a lot of them equated their spiritual status with their financial condition. And I don't think that's any different for us today. Many of us equate our financial status with our spiritual status. So sometimes if we say, if we're really blessed, by having more stuff, that means God has found favor with us. Somehow we are more spiritual. That couldn't be more far from the truth. And I want to just examine what James is talking about here. Our financial condition never really is a tool for us to assess our spiritual condition. And so James gives us a tangible example of a trial with our finances. And he starts off in verse 9. He talks about believers in humble circumstances. The reality is that word that he's using there is that it's really about poor Christians who are financially not doing too well. And so he's using the idea of humble circumstances as a euphemism for those who are poor, or for people of little significance. And he says, take pride in your high position. See, here's the thing. We like to evaluate ourselves on how much we have. We like to evaluate who we are on how much we've accomplished or how well we're known. And so when we compare to everyone else, we seem to be on the lower end of the totem pole. When you compare to other people's riches, or when you compare to other people's status or their accomplishments. And so what he's saying is, don't measure yourself by that standard. The first thing he says is believers. He's saying you who believe in Jesus, that's your first identifying marker. It's not your bank account. It's not how many people know you. It's not how many friends you have on Facebook. It's about the fact that you're a believer. That's the great equalizer. It's our relationship with Jesus. Don't lose sight of your relationship with Jesus. And then he says, take pride in this. And sometimes I think we're a little bit off when we think about taking pride. We say, oh, that's not a good thing. Or boasting, that's not a good thing. It's okay. It just depends on what you're boasting about. And he says it this way. Boast about Jesus. Boast about your relationship with Jesus. At the end of the day, we have received a great love from God that we didn't deserve. And that's a great perspective to have. And if we remind ourselves always that it's not our bank account, it's not the size of your house, it's not the fancy clothes that you wear, it's the relationship you have with Jesus. If that is your measuring point, boast about that. Take pride in that. For those of you who are Canadians, Scotiabank has this slogan, you're richer than you think. And by goodness, if you're a believer in Jesus Christ, you are definitely richer than you think. He continues in verse 10, and he says, the rich should take pride in their humiliation. Again, the poor would need encouragement because they see how the rich are. But the rich need humility because we get ahead of ourselves when we're rich. See, riches lead to pride. It leads to arrogance. It leads to us thinking that we're better than we really are. And somehow, again, one of the things is that goes with it is we think somehow that because we have more, God somehow favors us more. And that, again, is not the truth. And so the rich will suffer the same fate. We will evaluate ourselves based on our financial condition rather than on our condition with Jesus. And so the struggle is, don't measure yourself by your house or your car or your job or your degrees. Measure yourself with how you're doing with your relationship with Jesus. The truth of the matter is, in verses 11, it says, riches are temporary. The things that we have in this world are temporary. They're going to come and they're going. Riches, popularity, fame, accomplishments, all those things do not last. And so who we are in Christ is what really matters. And so if you're going to go through a trial of finances, don't measure it based on how much you have left in your bank account. Measure it on your relationship with Christ. Success and failure, those are two ends of a spectrum. And success leads us to one extreme and failure can lead us to another extreme. But no, remember who you are in Christ. Popularity or being lonely, those are two ends of the spectrum. Being rich or poor, again, these things can lead you to pride or they can lead you to despair. But what matters is who you are in Jesus. He ends off in verse 12 by talking about the finish line. Blessed are those, right? And if you hear that word blessed, go back to the Sermon on the Mount when Jesus talks about that same word. He talks about the Beatitudes and he's talking about blessed. And the idea of being blessed is that you have found favor in God's eyes. And to find favor is not in your bank account. It's not in your accomplishments. To find favor is the very fact that you have a relationship with God. And so James is calling us, be faithful in your trials because there's a reward at the end if you're faithful in your trials. So remain faithful in your trials. So whether it's a financial trial, whether it's a relationship trial, whether it's a health trial, if you remain faithful in that, there's a reward for you. He calls it the crown of life. And so he's saying keep focused on beyond the trials. Keep focused on not on the things of this world, not on the riches or the accomplishments, but keep focused on what's to come. The idea that we will have rewards, heavenly rewards. So what are we supposed to do with this? First thing, keep a proper perspective on your material things. Keep a proper perspective on your material things. More does not equal blessed. More does not equal blessed. The reality is your material things are insignificant at the end of the day. What your relationship with Jesus is the most important. Especially when you're going through a trial, you're going to find and understand more. What is your relationship to Jesus? If God takes away all of your finances, what is your relationship with Jesus going to be like? If God takes away your health, what is your relationship with Jesus going to be like? And that's the key there. So how is your relationship with God? How is that going? Are you in a relationship with God? Do you have a good relationship with God? And at the end of the day, ask yourself this question. Is God determining your worth or is something else determining your worth? Does God determine my worth or have I let something else determine my worth? Whether it's my status, my accomplishments, my degrees, my academics, my bank account, my house, my job. Do those determine my worth or does God determine my worth? So that's it for this video here. Join us again as we continue to look through the book of James.